So a lot of people had questions last Monster Hunter video about my lance, my damage, my build, decos, weapons, that kind of stuff. So I wanted to compile everything that I know about lance and title update 2.5, so we're all on the same page and we all know what to do, what to expect, that kind of stuff for lance. And we're going to touch on everything. There's going to be timestamps for everything. Well, anything from food, buffs, decos, everything. And then I'm going to take you on a hunt to kind of show off the weapon. So without further ado, let's start with the eating. This is very important for lance and for any weapon, really. If you want to do monster damage the way I was doing, eating is part of that. You have to eat for +5 raw instead of +2. If you eat from your grill, you'll notice here if I go to my favorites, you only get +2. So this effect that I have on here is, I think, from Sild, from Wyveria. They recently offered me a food. And so you have options like Moxie, Defender, Caprice, I think, is one, and then also Tumbler. And the only way to get the +5 is from a meal invitation or the hub. And the hub meals you can basically only get from specific tickets for barrel rolling and stuff like that. You can look up all the specifics for that. There's also guides for barrel rolling optimally and just grinding tickets and stuff like that, I'm pretty sure. So you can look into that if you really want that +5. I personally, unless I'm making a video or it's a time attack challenge quest or stuff like that, bro, I just eat for +2. It really doesn't matter that much. It's not going to kill your gains or whatever. Just eat for something you like Moxie. Put something else in the finishing touch, and that's it. Just eat for meat. Because the alternative is a lot of grinding. And speaking of grinding, also buffs. You need to have a meal for your crafting and stuff like that, ingredients. So this one's very important. You need to grind for the truffle to then grind for ingredients to get your buffs. This means demon powder, might seed, then craft might pills, craft mega demon drugs, craft mega demon drugs, craft immunizers, craft ancient potions, max potions. All of these things are very important, and so you need to eat for that as well. And now to apply them, once you do have them, or if you do have them, the way you do it is you apply the mega demon drug before going into a hunt, and then once you spawn in, you take a might seed, demon powder, might pill, and then every time the monster moves location, you take the might pill, might seed, and might demon powder again. Now, might seed and might pill don't actually stack, but once the pill runs out, the might seed is still active. That's basically how that works. And yeah, this is very expensive. So for most hunts, if you're playing multiplayer as well, I would suggest just taking Mega Demon Drug. It lasts you like 2 or 3 hunts, 4 maybe. And then maybe, if you really like your friends, a Demon Powder to buff everyone. And that's about it. Okay, so that's buffs, that's food. We can now talk about new combos, which is pretty cool. So it used to be, for the most part, you wanted to do like mid, high triple thrust while you're in combat. That really hasn't changed too much personally, but what you want to do now for raw is actually start with a high, then do sweep, high, and then charge counter. Obviously, if the monster is toppled, you're not actually going to counter anything, but it's still the highest damage. That's just how the math worked out. If you're far away, you need to replace the first one, the first high, with a leaping thrust to just get in there, of course. And for elemental, you still get the triple thrusts. So you get mid, sweep, mid, triple thrust. If you're using Corrupted Mantle, you still get to use triple thrust and spam that and stuff like that. No big change there. Those are the new combos, really. There are a few variations that you can do, like mid, sweep, high. The main thing here is trying to fit as many sweeps as possible in your gameplay in that second slot of the combo. That takes some time. I'm still getting used to it because the monster's going to be up and attacking you. You need to know the timing and everything. I still use triple thrust over charge counter at the end for most situations because it's just safer. You get to block during the animation, essentially, at any point. You can interrupt the thrusting. But I will say, like, if you do finish a combo with a charge counter and you see that the monster's rearing up to attack you or something, it is nice because you get a fully charged charge counter. So you can just hold it and then let it rip. and counter the big attack. Okay, so that is combos. We can now talk about weapons. All right, so related to weapons and decos, we have a few things to talk about. Primarily, the Skyscraper is the best lance that you can get. You need at least 2 reinforcement bonuses to be equal or better than most craftable lances. There are a few exceptions. And then Sharpness and Affinity are just kind of there as slots that you get randomly. Now, the optimal lance right now, I think the consensus is 4 attack, 1 sharpness. But I personally like 2 sharpness, 3 attack, just because it's comfier. And I'm not really speedrunning at the moment, so it really doesn't affect me. But if you're just starting out, you wanna craft a lance to just get going and get started with a Skyscraper with 2 attack, and then some sharpness and affinity is gonna work perfectly fine. You don't need to grind for that perfect Artian roll, because that gets tedious and very boring. And on that note, if you're like me, you're gonna say, Fitz, I love all of this. I love the content so far. I hate Artian. It sucks. They all look the same. I don't wanna, use Artian. Are there any options in the tech tree or craftable lances? And the answer is yes, there's actually quite a few. So for fire, I personally prefer the Shining Pillar. It is one of the most competitive craftable lances out there right now. It has 220, basically the same as a Skyscraper, 15 affinity, and 250 fire. It is really good. It has wide sharpness as well. And then on top of all that, it actually has Master's Touch built in. So we can put offensive guard and crit boost on it, which is really, really, really strong. This is something other lances can't really afford of this tier. The other 2 that I really like are pretty much identical, the Sansi Pralaya and the Regret. Because of offensive guard built in, they actually get to use crit boost, unlike other lances. And so the 10 raw that it has less does get kind of equalized by the crit boost, because it's like 34% extra criticals. They're still a little bit worse than the optimal lances, but they're fun to use. Another alternative is the Blazing Citadel. It's basically just an Artian, which is cool. It's craftable, but you do have to fight Zoh Shia for it. 200 dragon, and then you can't fit crit boost on this unless you're using an RNG Talisman, but we'll get to that in a moment. But that's 220, 5 affinity, and 200 dragon, which is great. And then the extra bonus damage from White Flame Torrent. Really, really good. And then the high accuracy is also fantastic. It's actually better in Thunder matchups than an Artian Lance, which is cool. 220 raw, 0 affinity, 400 Thunder, and then convert Thunder resistance is really strong. And then on top of that, for our guard friends, it has guard 2, which is great for a few matchups as well. So really, really strong. Honorable mentions that I've seen historically that have been used are the Gore Magala Lance for Element, and then the Ray Dow Lance before Lagiacrus. The problem with ice is that there basically isn't any ice lance. There's only the Hirabomi Lance. It looks cool, it's a banner, but it sucks. Like, even compared to these craftable options, which are 210 lower, the Hirabomi Lance legitimately sucks. It's just too far behind the rest of the pack. So don't bother. If you're gonna craft an Artian Lance, you're gonna have to craft an ice one first. All right, so decos. Decos are very tight for lance, actually. We have basically everything we need, and nothing else really fits. We have offensive guard first. If you have to sell Alma's belongings, or you have to sell your Palico off to get offensive guard, this is something you have to do. Offensive guard is a must for every lance. It basically has 100% uptime. It is a requirement. No if, buts about it. Offensive guard. Secondly, almost as important, some kind of sharpness management between Razor Sharp and Handicraft, or what's the other one? Master's Touch. These are both very good, depending on your affinity. So if the build that you're running has lower than 80% affinity average over the hunt, you want to run Razor Sharp and Handicraft. If it has above 80% affinity, you want to run Master's Touch. Over 80%, Master's Touch starts giving you a 2.78 times effective affinity compared to the Razor Sharp's 2 times. So really, really strong. The elephant in the room here is Protected Polish. I got some comments. It's cool that you like Protected Polish. It definitely has some use cases, but historically what it was used for primarily was in very quick hunts where it lasted 2 minutes. So like, yeah, 90 seconds of that being free, it's great. But against 9-star tempered and AT monsters, it starts losing the fight because you need to sharpen the entire duration. Essentially, you have to do the entire animation to get the Protected Polish effect. When you want to get Protected Polish off after it runs out, the first 90 seconds, you have to consider the monster's not going to hit me, and then also I'm not losing any damage uptime doing this. And if those two things apply, then go ahead and use Protected Polish. In my experience, usually the monster is trying to kill me. And then on top of that, if the monster's not trying to kill me, I'm trying to kill it. So I don't have time for Protected Polish. I'm sorry. And then for the third slot, Critical Boost is just a no-brainer. Critical Boost is really, really strong. An alternative for some matchups is Mind's Eye. It gives you 30% attack power against hard targets. Hard targets means a monster part with 45 hit zone value or lower. This basically is the defense of the monster, how hard the shell is. So you can look this up at kiranico.com and other data mine sites. Some matchups off the top of my head that I use this on are Lagiacris, increasingly Mizutsune, Raidao for the legs, and Gormagala. Usually those four. Okay, now on to Talismans. Now Talismans are a dime a dozen. They're all very interesting. They're all very cool. It's the new wave. I'm here to tell you they're not that big of a deal. And you need to temper your expectations for the Talismans because they're not going to help you too much. At most, the optimal Talismans are going to give you, say, like a 1% improvement over an already optimized build. This is simply because the more you have of something, the less you need of it. And so you get diminishing returns. Sorry to burst your bubble, but RNG Talismans are pretty cool for enabling different builds. And this is their primary function, and that's what a lot of people are trying to use them for. Kind of optimal, quote-unquote, or really good Talismans kind of look like this. You have Wex 1 plus another Wex here, so you have Wex 2, which is equivalent to the craftable one. And then you get some value here. It could be attack boost, it could be crit boost, it could be offensive guard, it could be guard, it could be sharpening, like razor sharp, whatever. You know, it's just some extra value. That's why they're not that impactful. But there are others that are really, really interesting. For example, this one. It's one of my favorites. It's one of my best pulls. Offensive Guard 2, Max Might 2, and a 2 slot and a 1 slot. This is really, really powerful. And primarily, this is something I would use on a non-Artian lance. Because as you can see here, we already have Offensive Guard 3. There's no way to like combo it with anything. Nothing's gonna combo with Offensive Guard. It's just Offensive Guard. But this does work for something like the Blazing Citadel that doesn't get to use crit boost. So you get to use Master's Touch here. Let me look it up. Master's Touch, and then here you do get to use crit boost 2, where you otherwise wouldn't, and then you get Offensive Guard 3. And this boosts the Citadel way more, and it makes it really, really, really effective. But that also obviously means that you need to have a build that would have used Max Might to begin with. So most of the quote-unquote optimal Talismans will end up being either Agitator or Weakness Exploit. That's just how it works out. But yeah, I invite you to get freaky with them, honestly. There's some really funny combinations here. And finally, we move on to the builds. Lance actually has quite a few. I've made 6 here right now for you. So the first one is the highest theoretical DPS build. And this is the meta build. Oh my god, look at this awesome build. In practice, it's really dependent on latent power, and it also doesn't have a set bonus. So for those points, I personally don't really like it. Only crafted it for the video because I knew someone was going to say, oh, there's actually a build that's like 1.7% better than this, and it uses this. Yes, I know. It's just boring. I personally find it boring. I don't think I've seen people actually run this in any speedrun recently, but it is the theoretical best DPS build. The second one is the workhorse. This is a laggy 2-piece. It's carried me through Uth Duna, and it's going to continue to carry me through Mizu and any other water monster that they add. This one is fantastic. It only uses 1 latent power, so it's very, very consistent in terms of affinity, but it can lose out on a little bit of theoretical DPS, but it has everything that you need. It has Wex, Agitator 5, Max Might, like I said, latent power. And also, EvadeExt 2 is a tax that we have to pay from the Sand Braces that historically we haven't been able to get rid of since AT Raidao came out. But, you know, if you like EvadeExt for Lance, this is actually a positive, so it's all well and good. Next, we have the Numinous 2-piece. This one's the comfort build. It is so comfy, especially if you take something like an immunizer. Not quite as well as Arcveld. We haven't really found a way to make Arcveld work the way Gunlance has been able to, maybe at some point in the future. But yeah, Numinous right now is the comfy one for self-healing, and it's pretty good. It overall has lower damage, but the passive healing makes up for it. It's kind of like a midpoint with latent power too. Really, really strong. And then if you don't really like the EvadeExt, the Sword and Shield department waged war against the EvadeExt. They actually came up with this variant. This has no set bonus, has a little bit less damage than the rest of the builds that we talked about previously, but it has everything you need: Wax 5, Agi 5, Max Might, Quick Sheath, Latent Power, Burst, everything except EvadeExt. So if you are also one of those people that wage war against EvadeExt, you hate it, you don't want to see it ever again, then you can use this. It also gives you 5 1 slots. If you particularly like, say, things like Divine Blessing or Speed Eating, or like me, you're trying to make this like this weird support build with wide range, then by all means go for it. Really, really good, and kudos to the Sword and Shield people. And then next up we have some meme builds. These are 2 of my favorites and the ones that have worked the best against like 9-star Tempered Gore and stuff like that. Guardian Ebony is an absolute hoot. It hits like a freight train, quite honestly, but it is incredibly reliant on latent power. But since you're so aggressive, you usually do proc latent power fairly consistently. If you're trying to fight like some middling monster that just primarily runs away from you instead of actually hitting you, then this will not really see too much damage, because, well, with the latent power 5, we actually hit 98% affinity. So at most you have 48 affinity with that latent power, which sucks. We're using this variant here because there's another variant with the Ebony chest that is fairly common and popular right now, but that one has earplugs, and we don't really care about earplugs in the last department, so we're using this variant here. And finally, my favorite build, actually, this is I guess the first time you're gonna see this, but I've been a fan of Resentment since Rise Sunbreak, and I've been trying to use Resentment since day 1 in this game, and it culminated in a build that I call the Opps Destroyer for Greatsword, where you use a shoulder tackle to basically just get resentment and counter-strike up 24/7. It basically has like an 80% uptime. And so this is the same build, but kind of catered towards Lance. We don't use counter-strike, but we do get resentment 5, agi 5, max might, lane power, and a little bit of wax. This only really works because of the historical talisman. I'll show you why. This is the only way in the game right now to actually get resentment 3 until they release the resentment 3 craftable talisman. Kind of locked behind an RNG talisman, but I think the resentment 2 plus a 2 slot are not that uncommon. But just giving you a heads up, this is probably the most unrealistic build out of all of them. You can still run this with resentment 4, but your damage is gonna be a little bit worse. So now I'm gonna actually take you on a hunt to show off this build because it's really funny, and then also just Lance in general. So we're gonna be using the Laggy Lance primarily because we are fighting Uth Duna. So we'll put some mobility here, and that's looking pretty good. Laggy Udra. Yeah, we're using the good set, proper set. Okay, so we're gonna eat for summer meal. This also gives us Moxie. I don't think I mentioned it, but for this build, it is also very useful to be using Moxie. And yeah, we'll see what Uth Duna gives us. AT variant. I've been having some really good times now thanks to the changes to Lance and the moveset and everything, so we'll see. It also shows you the sequence of buffs here. Demon Powder, Might Seed, Might Pill. And always, as always, start with the ambush. Oh, we managed to get it off. That's very nice. So yeah, this is basically the whole build. As you can see, trip by trip, we do take damage. But the idea is we're micro-dosing Counter-Strike, because we're not allowed to use it, really, otherwise. His whale's already off. Yeah, you do a lot of damage. This is a pretty funny build. You should be roaring here. Oh, I charged counter, dude. I knew it was coming, too. But obviously it's a difficult and like dangerous playstyle if you're not used to it. So that's why you should eat for Moxie. And then also you should have your Palico. Ooh, that was dangerous. You can see the amount of sweeps we're getting. And also the amount of charge counters we're getting. Even though we're not countering anything, like I said, the damage is just insane. So incredibly risky there. I really wouldn't have done that if I wasn't just showing off the guide or the build, because I nearly died. But you know, no harm, no foul. Oh, the high thrust is difficult to counter or cancel there. So it's going right side. Here we can eat or heal up. Okay, that's the first power clash actually. I think I did mention that power clashes are just a loss in DPS. Oh, didn't get it in time. We got a worse version of Retribution Thrust, but not much we can do there. Look at all those power guards. That was dangerous, almost happened again. We have to get out of the way there because uh-oh. Yeah. That was really, really dangerous. That move is incredibly tough to actually charge counter reliably because it can hit up to 3 times depending on where he's standing. Cool. So lots of damage. We also have a rock down there, so we'll be able to use that. And here's where we sharpen. You notice that we sharpened once, and that just shows you how little protective polish would have done there. You can time it though, and if you do consider... Oh, we got it off though. If you do consider that protective polish would have been good there, then sure, go for it. Oh, didn't input my kill. Unfortunate. Lost a little bit of time there. Should be close to Craftable. There he is. we go. Alright, so obviously a casual hunt there, but pretty efficient overall without even using a mantle. So, I mean, you increase that by God knows how much, how many percents. But yeah, definitely a definitely a hunt. That build's really funny. Go ahead and try it if you have a similar deco or a similar talisman. But yeah, all of these are very competitive, like I said. So give them a shot or apply them to your own build, your own weapon. And yeah, if you have any other questions, do let me know. And as always, have a good one.